Please open in your learning workbook to page 62 and read along as we learn together. Our final objective is solve problems that can be modeled by a system of two linear equations. Before we begin, I'd like to share my perspective on this particular topic. I'm going to be honest with you. The remaining problems from this section are word problems. And I know that students sometimes have a lot of hatred for word problems or maybe fear of word problems. So I'm going to encourage you to truly embrace the skills that I'm going to teach you. There are 4 steps to solving any word problem. And what we're going to do is we're going to practice getting really good at each of those 4 steps. And then all you need to do is to be able to put the 4 steps together in the proper order, and then you can solve the word problems from this section. We're going to really heavily emphasize step 1. Step 1 is the most important part of solving any word problem, because in step 1, we're going to try and figure out what it is that we are being asked to find in a particular problem. And to do that, you really have to imagine yourself in that situation and think to yourself, what am I trying to discover? What am I trying to find for this particular situation? Okay, let's look at the steps. To solve problems modeled by systems of 2 equations, follow these steps. Step 1, read and reread the problem to identify what 2 things you are being asked to find. Define a variable for each one. Write the variable name, followed by what it represents. You must include the word number or the word of, or both, in your variable definition. This is the most important part. It's the most important step. And it's also the step that most students tend to skip when they are solving problems from this section. So I implore you, do not skip step 1. You need to get really good at step 1. Okay, step 2. Translate the English statements in the problem into 2 mathematical equations using your chosen variables. Step 3. Solve the system of equations for the value of both variables. Step 4. Interpret your answer using the variable definitions from step 1. So you can see that in order to do step 4, you have to have done step 1. And that's yet another reason why step 1 is so very important. Now, there are multiple ways to teach this topic. Some algebra instructors will give you a problem, and they'll do all 4 steps for that problem, and then they'll move on to the next one, and the next one, and the next one. But what I've found is that students need practice on the steps individually. So instead of taking that approach, what we're going to do instead is this. I'm going to present you with 5 problems, and all we're going to do is step 1, so that you can get really good at it. We're going to isolate step 1 from all of the other steps. Okay, so for each of the following problems, read and reread the problem to identify what 2 things you are being asked to find. Define a variable for each one. Write the variable name followed by what it represents. You must include the word number or the word of or both in your variable definition.